Have you ever noticed that sitting alone in a quiet room with absolutely nothing to do doesn't just feel peaceful, it actually starts to feel physically uncomfortable? Why does our brain punish us with the physical pain of doing nothing? Evolution didn't make boredom a mistake or a flaw in your character. It designed a primal survival signal that forces you to scavenge for novelty to stay adaptable. Today, we're going to discover how this internal restlessness is actually a highly sophisticated biological mechanism engineered specifically to prevent your neurons from shutting down and keeping you alive in a dangerous world. Think about physical pain for a moment. If you touch a hot stove, the pain forces you to pull your hand away to prevent tissue damage. Similarly, hunger is an alarm bell that your body is running out of fuel. In modern psychology, researchers have classified boredom not as an emotion, but as a drive state. It operates on the exact same biological hardware as thirst or physical pain. This discomfort is an evolutionary alarm bell ringing inside your skull, warning you that your current environment is no longer providing the stimulation or resources you need to thrive. But surely resting shouldn't trigger an alarm, right? The strange truth is that your brain doesn't actually turn off when you space out. When you do absolutely nothing, a neural network called the default mode network fires up. Discovered in brain scans in the early 2000s, this network consumes a massive amount of metabolic energy just to maintain a baseline of mental activity. Your brain is aggressively guarding against stagnation. When there is no external problem to solve, it starts generating its own internal friction, urging you to get up, move, and find something, anything, to interact with. To truly understand why a lazy Sunday afternoon can suddenly induce a crisis of existential dread, we have to rewind the clock. We are going to trace the ancestral roots of your boredom back to the African savannas. We will decode the chemical pathways that turn you into an information scavenger, and finally, we will uncover how an ancient survival trait became the very thing that traps us in the modern world. It is time to look at your boredom not as a curse, but as the engine of human civilization. Let's begin the journey. Picture early human ancestors living as hunter-gatherers hundreds of thousands of years ago. In this harsh environment, staying in one place for too long was a guaranteed death sentence. Every day they spent in a particular valley meant fewer berries on the bushes, fewer animals to hunt, and dirtier water. Ecologists describe this using a model called the optimal foraging theory. This theory calculates the exact moment an animal realizes that the energy spent searching for dwindling food in their current patch is greater than the energy required to travel to a brand new one. For our ancestors, that mathematical calculation wasn't done on a spreadsheet. It was felt entirely as a mounting psychological discomfort. As the resources around them depleted, a creeping sense of dissatisfaction and restlessness would begin to infect the tribe. That feeling is the raw, unrefined version of what you call boredom today. It was the ultimate biological eviction notice. The humans who felt this discomfort deeply were the ones who packed up and moved over the next hill to find fresh resources. Those who didn't feel bored simply starved, and their genes died with them. But humans are fundamentally different from other animals. We don't just forage for calories, we forage for information. Knowing the layout of the land, understanding the weather patterns, and discovering which plants are toxic were just as crucial for survival as a piece of meat. Because of this, the human brain became hardwired to scavenge for novelty. We evolved a highly specialized emotional circuit called the seeking system. Driven by dopamine, this system rewards us not just for achieving a goal, but for the mere act of anticipating and exploring something new. Every time you encounter a novel piece of information, your brain gives you a tiny chemical reward, updating its internal map of the world to ensure future adaptability. Boredom is simply the withdrawal symptom of this dopamine system. When your environment becomes predictable, the flow of new information stops. Your brain perceives this lack of new data as a massive vulnerability. It panics, sending out a wave of lethargy and agitation to force you to change your behavior. It is punishing you for letting your mental map of the universe become outdated. This restless urge to scavenge for novelty left a permanent mark on our DNA. Consider the genetic mutation known as DRD4-7R, often dubbed the wanderlust gene. This specific genetic variation modulates dopamine receptors in the brain, making an individual crave higher levels of novelty and risk to feel satisfied. Researchers mapping human genetics have found a fascinating geographical pattern. The further a modern human population migrated away from humanity's evolutionary cradle in Africa, the higher the prevalence of this specific restless gene in their DNA. The people who embarked on terrifying voyages across frozen land bridges or navigated uncharted oceans in wooden canoes weren't just looking for food. They They were driven by an extreme genetic intolerance to the familiar. The discomfort of the known pushed them into the unknown. Boredom was the invisible whip that drove Homo sapiens out of a single continent and led to the total global dominance of our species. The restlessness you feel in a waiting room is the exact same evolutionary echo that caused your ancestors to conquer the globe. So, we have a brain perfectly calibrated for a dangerous, unpredictable world. It rewards us for exploring and punishes us with boredom when we stay still. But what exactly happens when you take this incredibly sensitive piece of ancient survival hardware and plug it into a safe, comfortable living room with access to an infinite stream of digital information? The answer explains almost everything about why modern life feels so utterly exhausting. In the modern era, our primal drive to scavenge for novelty has been completely hijacked. Your smartphone is effectively an all-you-can-eat buffet for the dopamine-driven seeking system we discussed earlier. Technology companies perfectly understand the optimal foraging theory. They designed infinite scrolls and push notifications to mimic the unpredictability of a wild environment. When you scroll through a feed, your brain thinks it is successfully foraging for vital survival data, rewarding you with small dopamine hits for every new image or headline. However, this is artificial novelty. It is the information equivalent of junk food. It triggers the chemical reward without providing any real-world utility or deep understanding. Because the stream of content never ends, your brain never receives a signal of completion. You become trapped in a loop of constant foraging, endlessly trying to satisfy a prehistoric itch. Ironically, by constantly running away from the discomfort of boredom through endless scrolling, you exhaust your dopamine receptors. You end up feeling chronically drained, yet deeply unsatisfied. This brings us to a radical realization. If boredom is a biological signal telling you to change your environment, then numbing it with a screen is like turning off a smoke alarm while your house is burning down. Boredom isn't the enemy, it is a highly intelligent call to action from your own biology. When you allow yourself to truly feel the pain of doing nothing without reaching for a distraction, you force your brain to find meaningful ways to engage with reality. You force it to imagine, to create, and to solve complex problems. Evolution engineered the physical pain of boredom because it knew that a comfortable creature is a stagnant creature. The urge to scavenge for novelty, to look over the horizon, and to ask, what's next, is the defining characteristic of the human species. Every brilliant invention, every great work of art, and every scientific breakthrough in human history was born out of a moment when someone decided that the current reality was too predictable and simply refused to be bored anymore. Boredom is the catalyst for human progress. The next time you find yourself stuck in a quiet room with nothing to do, don't run from the discomfort. Let the restlessness wash over you. Listen to what your ancient brain is trying to tell you, and see where that primal drive takes you next. If you want to keep feeding your seeking system with high-quality information instead of digital junk food, hit the subscribe button and join us for more explorations into the bizarre machinery of the human mind. Stay curious, and thanks for watching.